Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. I guess we
Hello,
are
guys.
we are all on the track together with Carolina. Carolina, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And how are you holding up in this current situation?
Yeah, I mean it's as everyone a little bit for everyone I would say totally different and yeah a little bit intensive, but we
It
just
is.
need to keep on track on what is happening and then make it the best out of it. And actually, I guess thank you that we could prepare this presentation about how to deal with remote software testing services based on our experience. I would say where we work for Test Army, we already do this remote software testing for 10 years. So together with Carolina, we just thought that it will be nice to say a few more words about how we do this remote testing in order to be successful with those projects. And yeah, me personally, I'm the business manager responsible for international markets, where I work with US and Europe. Privately, I play basketball. That's why, yeah, my top league, I would say favorite league, NBA, is right now on a lockout right now. So we are watching with my friends the previous classics of NBA games. And yeah, what about you, Carolina? If you could like say to the audience a few words about yourself.
Sure. And I am a quality assurance engineer in Test Army, and we are working together for several years now. And as you said, Janek, we are experts and remote working, and the current situation is nothing for us, I can say, because we are used to this kind of work, and it is easy for us to adapt to the current situation. And privately, after working hours, I am focused on home activities. So that's good according to the stay home procedures. And I am a gamer. I play mostly on console games. I'm a huge Sony fan, and
So
I am a
are you
bookworm
following
as
right
well.
now are you following any tournaments right now with esports or
No,
not
no,
really? Like what
I
type of
no,
game?
no. I am a single player.
Okay, okay,
So esports is not quite a thing for me.
okay, yeah, of course. So as we said, like we work for the company which is already on the market for 10 years. Did the number of types of software testing projects where yeah, just to let our audience know, we are based in Poland, and as I said, most of our clients are from Europe and US, so we work on a remote basis on the daily basis. And we found out that the important values for our partners, we can describe them in three things, which is the communication, flexibility, and efficiency. I would elaborate a little bit more about efficiency. This one leads to the not only successful projects, but how to not waste cost, how to not waste working hours, how to find the right people for those projects in order to make it all, I would say, successful. And we just want to share a few more stories and the whole process, how we are creating those values for those partners, because it's not the coincidence, I would say, that we are already like 90 people office, and our references can be seen here as the huge clients list which we work or we used to work for the past 10 years. And this one like leads me to the first, like I would say, step where we start working with our clients. So is the first conversation, basically. So when we are engaging, so obviously quality assurance, it's such a broad topic, and in order to deliver what it's needed, we need to elaborate a little bit more what actually is the problem, what's the business about, what are the plans about the business, having this broad perspective of where we are right now and where we are going. And here we found that it's extremely important that both sides are on the same page, and in order to be on the same page, the easiest is to write down everything. So when we have the company which is divided into 4 departments, which is functionality, automation, security, and performance testing, we just, for each type of the projects, when the clients are coming to us, we just distribute the brief where they ask the questions about what's happening in the projects, what's the problem, in order to get as much information as possible to deliver as big best value as possible. Karolina, would you add anything over here?
Sure, I can, if you let me, of course. I wanted to say that we can divide our clients into 2 groups. One are the startups, which are creating their own software. And the second group are the software houses, which are developing software for their own clients as well. And as Janek mentioned, it's crucial for us to define what is quality for our clients and for end users as well. And I wanted to mention from my perspective, Janek mentioned those briefings and those first conversations with the client. And it's important that the QA engineer can attend to those meetings as well, because he can just go look at the project through his own eyes, ask correct questions. And we know from experience that the sooner the QA is working on the project, the better.
Yeah, I would say that even though this type of webinar we are having right now, when you are the technical person, I'm the more business person, it's kind of, I would say, showing up that what you said about having this technical knowledge from the very beginning is very important. And
there are 2 sides of the same coin for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like the point which you said about different type of companies when it comes to the software houses or the startups. I would elaborate even more on that. In there are different industries which are having different problems on the different I would say time zones. There are different timelines for them. Sometimes they are at the beginning of the journey of the QA. Sometimes they are very mature, where you just need to make it more efficient and elaborate a little bit more on this QA. There are various types of problems. So that's why this briefs and this being on the same page from the beginning, it's one of the first steps we are making with our clients. And here we prepare a few examples of questions, which are in this example are from our functionality department, which Karolina, you are the expert with. So could you please say why is it so important, and why those examples of questions we want to show over here?
Sure. I wanted to focus on, for example, the first one. What is the problem that you are trying to solve with functional or manual testing or automation or performance, etc.? We need to know what work needs to be done to plan our testing process correctly and to choose the right person to do the job. Because in our company, we have some people that are experts in the web applications, and some are feeling better with the mobile applications. So that's why we need to know what's the scope of the testing process, what was the scope of the testing, and then we can just choose the right person to do that. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. And
one of my favorites, where we are starting working with new partners. We ask them, okay, tell us what to test and what not to test. This one might be a little bit confusing. So we always kind of describe it that when the application is so big and we have such a testing problem to solve, it is most of the times the development is working on the other project, which is the part of this application, and it doesn't make sense to test this part of the application where we should focus just on this one. So again, being on the same page and saying what to test and what not to test.
Yes, you're right. And the next thing is what is the most important scenarios business wise? And Janek, could you elaborate more on that? Because I think you are the businessman here. So
yeah. So over here, I would say the scenario is very very simple. When the business like what business wants at the moment and what the development process wants with the same page. So with those two things, we need to find the link between those two concepts, whether it's from the IT side or the business side, where this problem is basically coming from.
Yes.
So yeah, please.
Sorry, I wanted to just wrap up a little about the mobile devices and the browsers that the client thinks that are important for him and that need to be covered in our testing process. That's the thing that I mentioned earlier. When we know on what to test and what's the scope of our testing, then we can proceed with our job very much more easily. That when those things are not mentioned in the requirements, when those first calls with the client occurred, because then when the scope or something is changing, then we need to change our testing process, and we waste time on that organizational stuff, and we should be more focused on the testing process.
Yeah, exactly. And this one leads us like to the second step where we are starting the new project, which is the analysis of the problem and team assignment. So as I mentioned before, so the company is kind of big. We are a 90 people office with 4 different departments who are solving different problems. However, sometimes they need to work with each other. So that's why on the top of every of those departments, we have the QA delivery manager, who is more senior tester, who knows about the project, who knows about the problem, and who knows how to address those problems and solve them afterwards. So I guess this one is this structure is the outcome of our experience when those people needs to take place in the whole process. So it's not the company owner or the project owner who is assigned to this project from the very beginning. It's a QA delivery manager who is taking part in this business discussion. And the next one, which from my side I'm trying always to do already here, is to let the other side know what's going to happen next. Go through the whole journey and tell them what it's gonna why we are making this brief, what's gonna happen after this brief, and of course we will say a few more words about it, like in the following slides.
I wanted to mention as well that about the analysis of the problem is very important, because we need to know exactly what are the client requirements and what are his hopes for the final version of his product. So, for example, in the project that I'm working on right now, it's a client from Germany, and he wants us not only to focus on the testing process, to check and validate if the application works correctly and according to the test cases, but he wants us to create a whole process of our work, a whole development cycle, QA processes that needs to be properly addressed. And in that kind of projects, we are more of a consultant, which is also a very important role, because when we deliver a proper QA process for a client, then he can just use it and tell the others that, hey, I used it and it's a good way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And actually about this next step, it reminds me about one more thing. It's to being aware what problem might occur afterwards as well. So one of the problems which I found in the from the technical perspective is for example, having the accesses and making sure that the accesses are working. Like the best example is, of course, all types of the VPN. We are not saying that VPNs is something wrong to use, because are very secure and we are 100% for it. But when it comes to getting access to it, I would just make sure that all the accreditation which needs to be given afterwards to us or to the third party are just working fine.
Funny that you mentioned that VPN thing, because I was working, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks ago on a project from the United States. It was a mobile application for both Android and iOS platforms, and there was some complicated stuff regarding the configuration of the VPN. And I was not the only tester working on validating this application, and there was some other tester that was configuring this VPN, and he told me that I was lucky that I was not assigned to this job, because I don't know, he lost half a day to configure that, and he needed to do that alone. So that was a challenge.
It was just for you. Yeah. So
yes.
We can only imagine what is happening. Yeah.
Yes, and aside VPN configuration, sometimes we need some test data, like the credit card numbers, etc. And it is nice if it is delivered before we start our work, so we do not waste our precious time on waiting.
And that's why I'm not sure if it was like, I think we wrote it like as an example of the questions. What are the accreditations we might need afterwards as well? So having this knowledge from the beginning might help us afterwards to just go it smooth, because you said half a day, and a team of 10 people, then it's like 5 working days, and then you are not sure whether it's going to work the next day. So it's always better to be sure about those things up front.
Yes.
And here about like we just want to say a few words about how does it work from the internal team assignment to those type of projects. And here we prepared a list of the programs which are used by our QA managers leads to run such a big group of people, which are 90 people. So Grenade Hub, this one, and together with Calamari, helps us with the management of the skills and management of the time for the people when it comes to remote software testing. And I guess over here, Carolina, you will agree that the thing which we'll emphasize so many times, which is the communication. So this communication needs to take place as well internally in the company in order to make it as efficient as possible. So in our case, we use the most well-known, which are the Jira, Slack, and Trello. However, it doesn't mean that those ones need to be used afterwards in the project. So here, this flexibility comes from. So there are different types of tools of communication. Different companies are using the different ones, basically. So it's just a matter of what is more handy for your partner to communicate in the right way and make it stream, basically.
Yes, I agree. And one of my previous projects, we were working for a long time using Slack, and unfortunately, we needed to move to the Microsoft Teams. And I am not a huge fan of a Microsoft software, and it was quite a challenge to adapt. But we need to adapt, because it is not up to us to decide. The company was changing some stuff, and there were some other tools that we needed to start using.
So I would say here we made like a little bit of the product placement for those companies, and for Microsoft, unfortunately, was like anti market. So sorry for that. Like there's no product placement over here. And the next step, like in our step, is the kickoff, which is for me privately the most important part, because it's the summary of what we did so far, and letting everyone knows at the same time what is gonna, like what we found out, what is going to be made, and how it's going to look like, basically. And over here we found very handy that we meet all together. So it's not only the people who are going to work on the project, but it's me, it's the person who is signing the contract, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the director of the certain division, even though he's just the person who is at the end signing the contract. We always encourage him to come for those half an hour, 45 minutes to make this kickoff call together with us, in order to be at the same page. So at the end, it won't be that like this person who's deciding, what is going to happen, what did I decide, like how does it basically work. So this, again, communication and meeting all together at the same time, it's kind of the thing we found very very handy. And
Sorry, Janek, if I may. And in my opinion, it's very crucial because from my own experience, I can say that I was working with one client for a very long time. It was a client from the United States. So there are some things with the time zone differences, etc. But the client was with the development team from Poland from the beginning. There were many meetings with the client, and we had some structure that when there were some questions or we needed to just we wanted to know more about something, we were not afraid to reach the client, and then the client was familiarized with us. And in my opinion, it was easier for us to work with each other, especially if the project was if the project was handled for a very long time. I don't know, it lasted for more than 2 years.
Yep. Okay.
So I know it's cheesy, but communication is key indeed.
Yeah, that's right. And from my side, like I wrote here NDA and agreement. So I'm not only saying that having the NDA and having the agreement is very important, but I would add one more thing, that it's important to make all those things at the right time in order to not be backed, in order to not be late afterwards with the legal problem. So what I'm doing with my partners is basically that I'm sending the NDA and the agreement, the general terms, even though we are still under the discussion about what is going to be made, how it's going to be made, when it's going to be made, like the general terms, in order to send to the other company, having already this process starting, the legal process starting before, because we all know like the legal needs to take some time. It's important to have those rules up front. However, sometimes I found out that like the legal is working a little bit slower than the technical department. So we had to wait a few days with the technical, even though we were ready. It was important to start the project like now, today, ASAP. My favorite sentence in IT world. So having those legal processes started from the beginning, basically, it's kind of it helps afterwards to not waste time for waiting.
And yeah, like about a favorite quote, a favorite quote of mine is, it's when I hear from the developer, it's not a bug, it's a feature, then my skin is on fire.
Okay. So this one, like I guess we will do another webinar about the maybe not the battle. Battle is a strong word, but the discussion, I would say, between developers and testers on the daily basis. Yeah, exactly. So here we prepared, like together with Carolina, the approach of knowledge transfer, where we are just saying the few more tips, like what's our idea for those for this approach to knowledge transfer. So of course, having the rough plans and goals set up front, it's not only about saying theoretically what we want to do, but setting up the deadlines, even though some of the people might not like the deadlines, but at the end they occur to be very handy to have.
Sometimes they work as a motivation for us.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just remembered about the deadlines and the motivation when I was in one of my previous projects. We worked on redesigning of the whole existing platform, and we were having so much work to do, and our project manager told us that if we are going to deliver every story point that was planned in that sprint, we are going to have a pizza, and we managed to deliver, so we had a pizza party.
Okay, so so motivation by rewards. Okay,
yes,
cool.
Yes, and it worked.
It works, and that's the most important, I guess. So, and over here I wrote like this is my point. This is the master and Padawan approach. So just let everybody knows, like in our organization, the structure is very flat. But what I meant as a Star Wars fan over here is more that we have those QA delivery managers who are in the company. They have the knowledge, they have more experience. So over here, our testers, when they are making this project done, they are working on a daily basis on the problems. They always have the person who they can ask address the problem in order to solve it. So I guess this one at the kickoff meeting to have this QA lead and having the tester who is going to work on the project, and he will be the person who will be in direct contact with the company, is very, very important.
And as you mentioned, Janek, the kickoff meeting is a good place to distinguish who is the correct person to contact, whether I have problem regarding the designs, or whether have I some kind of a technical issue, or there is some organizational stuff to do. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So any other points here, Carolina?
I was thinking about that documentation to be properly created, and I just remembered that when I was working along for a very long time in one of my previous projects, we were familiarized with our project, with the architecture, etc. But when there were some new people coming, for example, the QA engineer to help me with the testing process, and some new developers, and the architecture was quite complicated, and we just found out that there was no enough, or if any, documentation created, because we knew that, and we weren't even thinking of the things, because we were working with this from day to day for months, years maybe. So it was easy for us, like breathing. But for them, it was quite hard to familiarize themselves with the project. So from my own experience, I can say that documentation is crucial.
Okay, we just see that Mr. Shallow is asking a question. We will just answer all the questions at the end of the presentation.
Yeah.
So we see them. So and then we will react
Don't
accordingly. Yeah, no worries. And yeah, so the next one, my favorite part, which we already mentioned. I guess Karina, it's your favorite as well.
Yes, it is.
It's the communication and the management of the project. So there are different projects, there are different people, there are I would say different approaches. However, it all leads to one thing, which is the efficiency, which is the success of the IT projects at the end. So here I will leave I will leave the voice to you, Carolina. Maybe one point from the business perspective, which I found out very, very handy, which is the general proactiveness. So basically, I encourage everyone in my projects to be proactive, address the problems, do not be afraid of it, because when you don't do it, then and you think something might fail, then it's better to address it before it will happen than when it's gonna happen afterwards. So this proactiveness, I would say, it's one of the things which I found out it's very handy.
Yeah, I can totally agree. I know that when we are not sitting in the same room with all other team members, it's quite hard for us to make a stand to show that we are here for them, and we are working together to deliver a product of high quality. So, as Janek mentioned, it's very important for us to be active, to do not be afraid to reach out, to ask, to write, to call someone if there are any questions, because communication is key. It sounds cheesy, but it is.
I think we repeated and here you prepared yeah, exactly. And here you prepared basically the day-by-day communication in your project, which turns out being very successful. So if you could just say your story and your how we were doing it.
Yes, sure, gladly. I was working with a couple of different projects for different clients, and with help from different companies. But my day-to-day communication in the project as a QA who's working remotely looks exactly, I think, exactly the same. So I can start with the communication tools. And as Janek mentions, there are many of them. Me, for example, I was connecting through Slack, through Hangouts, through Skype, and that hated by everyone, Microsoft Teams.
But it's getting better. It's getting better. I wasn't a big fan of the beginning, but when I understood
I know it is.
It makes it better. Hopefully they want to make it better as they did Skype, because I guess it was everyone's feeling when the Skype was saying the update is waiting. Would you like to update your Skype? And I was like, no, please, because it always gets even worse.
No.
So hopefully with Microsoft Teams, they will be on the right track. And actually, I guess they put a lot of attention to this tool, because when I was in New York, all the stations were about how to work remotely and how to use the Microsoft Teams. So maybe, Karina, it might change.
Okay, I hope so. I hope so. So maybe when I will start using it, maybe in one of my future projects, it will look better than in the previous ones. So the next thing that we just already mentioned a couple of times was the constant contact with all of the team members, whether it's another QA or the developers or the project managers or tech lead, etc. And I can say that from experience. In one of my previous projects, we have a little tradition that because all the team was working in Poland, but we were scattered through the whole country. I was working from Wrocław. Some of the people were working in Kraków, in Poznań, Bydgoszcz, and Szczecin. So we make our little tradition that when someone showed up in work, he just wrote on a special Slack channel created for this thing only to say just, hey, hello, I am at work. And when he or she finished his job, he just wrote, bye-bye, I'm going home. And that one line was very helpful, because then we knew when someone was available, on when someone was off, etc. So it was easy contact and to know where someone is available, or she or he can help us with something. And
actually, very clever. It sounds like this high-end goodbye thing, because it sounds like you built the physical office even though it was 100 remotely.
Yes,
like, I don't know,
yes.
It's kind of greeting as well. Hello, goodbye.
Yes, and it was crucial for us to form some kind of bonds, even if we were working not in the same room. Yeah, and it worked.
And I remember you said the story, and you gotta share it with our audience right now about this bonds, or like building up the bonds, like with your team. You mentioned about this game, right? So could you please say how was it?
Yes, sure. Why not? And it's connected to the next point that I want to say about the participation in Scrum meetings, because aside of the daily stand-ups that we have other Scrum ceremonies like planning, grooming, retrospective session. All of the people who work in Scrum methodology know those things. Sorry, guys. And they know that in some days they can last for hours. And to make it fun and easy to work with, and that's the story coming, Janek. So yeah, it's right now. And in one of my previous projects, I was new to the team, and it was quite a huge team. We were a team of, I don't know, 20 people, maybe. And I was new to the team, and it was my first retrospective session. And aside of the things that we like and we do not like in the current sprint, and I was not able to say anything because as I mentioned, I was new to the team. There was a mini game that every one of the team member wrote anonymously a card about what he or she is like doing in a free time, or something that about that any team member knew that about that person. And for example, after the mini game, it turned out that me and one of my fellow senior developers were into photography, and we switched and we exchanged our Flickr accounts, and we had a little chat privately about our passions, and it was nice to talk to them and make some bonds and to chat about not only work but just the stuff that we both like. So that
Okay,
was
okay, and
that was
then
a very
nothing
nice
serious.
bond.
And then I guess nothing serious happened. You start dating, and then you are
No,
right now
no,
together.
no. It was
I'm
just a
kidding,
chat at
of course.
work.
But
No.
I like this point very much of building up the team spirit within the
Yes,
team, because how big was that team you work with?
20 people, if I'm not mistaken.
How many? Sorry.
20 people.
20 people. So then 20 people is a big thing, and then joining the new team, and then knowing everyone, and then you work remotely, how to do it. And then I guess with those type of games, it's such a it's such a good idea, and I will definitely like implement it like in my team, because it sounds like, yeah, it sounds very nice. And
Remember, make notes.
yeah, exactly. Noted. And anything else over here? So easier to say than write sometimes.
It is, because when we are working with so many different people, some people like to write and some prefer calls. And I was working in one of my previous projects with a front-end developer, a very easygoing guy. And when I was trying to write to him on, for example, Slack or Skype, and he saw that I was writing him, he just called me immediately and said, no, don't waste your fingers on me. Just have a call. And usually when I was writing to him, something didn't work. So he always said, okay, just let me know what is going on. I will help you with it.
Okay.
So and some other guys preferred just to write other than calling each other.
Mm-hmm. And me as a person who is who's dealing with the people, because we are based in Poland and we are responsible for Europe and for US. Have you ever been in the project where there was like different time zones? How did you deal with those time zones difference?
Yes. I've worked with projects which face the time zone differences. For example, one of my longest projects, and the one that I am for this day most fond of, was a project when I was working, which I was working with for a year and a half, and if I'm not mistaken, and it was a project where client was from the United States. And it was the East Coast, so the time zone difference was 6 hours. And
Correct.
for example, and we had 2 daily meetings. One was for our Polish team, because the development was happening in Poland mostly. And we had a daily meeting at 10:30 a.m. our time. And then we had a second stand-up with the client at 3 p.m. our time. And one of my friends from work usually ended work around 3 p.m. And he was always making fun of me that, hey, I am working, I am going home, and you have another meeting, and it's daily meeting, which usually happen in the morning. So
yeah, that's right.
Shame.
Yeah, that's a shame. And so whenever I am in US, it's always very I would say tricky, those discussions about the time zones as well, because it's the worst on Fridays actually. So I'm sending in the morning like the messages to the rest of my team, like to basically the company, and everyone's saying, Jan, it's the weekend already. Like, I mean, relax over here. But then obviously, making this time, so it is possible. It's just about the building up this process, having those even 2 daily meetings in order to have the project up and running.
Yes. It may be a challenge, but it is something that both of the sites can work with. For example, some of the development in that project from the United States happened on their side. So I was in constant contact with developer from the United States. And for example, some days I was working till 5 or 6 p.m. because we were having some chats and calls. And on one of our retrospective meetings, I just mentioned that it's sometimes hard for us to discuss some things because of that different time zones. And that developer was quite nice to leave me at the end of his working hours a notes in Jira tickets. So when I was coming to work the next day, I just had some base to work with. And then when he showed up on Slack and I could just contact him and ping him and talk about the ticket, I just had some base, and it was a huge help from him, because I didn't have to wait for him all day just to ask one simple question.
Yeah, exactly. So this one, very good. So just as a very important point, communication, and then
communication. Yes.
So the process inside the IT project is the one thing to stream the communication within the teams. However, I found out very handy when the two companies are working with each other to have this communication, not only like technical-wise, but the business-wise or the general-wise, like to have both sides basically understood each other all the time, and there is always the room for the improvement. And that's why for the couple of years already, we implement such a thing as the survey and monitoring client satisfaction, where we are basically distributing the questions to our clients. Where we are, where we're gonna be. From my experience, I can say that sometimes those surveys leads to the minor changes in the testing project, like business-wise as well, because we found out based on this survey that here is the room for the improvement, and we should focus on that immediately.
Yes, and I agree. And those survey and the monitoring of the client satisfaction depends on the project, because when there are some short projects, we just gather feedback after the project has ended. But if the project lasts for, I don't know, a year, we just periodically ask the client how is she or he feeling, how are our testers doing, is the quality delivered okay for him?
Here we prepare
and we have those questions right here for you guys.
Yeah.
So those are the basic questions that we ask, and in my opinion, we can cover most things in them. For example, in my opinion, the most important things, what should be improved, because some clients like to work that way, and some clients like to work another way. And we just need to adapt to their needs and requirements. But it's a field for us as a QA or other team members to work with, because when we see during the project delivery that something is not going on well, there are some things that needs further improvement, etc. We just need to contact the correct person as soon as possible to correct those mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And those surveys are not like, of course, all conducted, I would say, on a monthly basis, but I would say every half a year, every 1 year, in order to wrap up everything all together and get this feedback. And luckily for us, like, it was positive. So but obviously, as we were saying, there's always like a room for the improvement. And I'm always saying that if something is slightly, I would say, negative, and it's a very good feedback, it's always very, very valuable, even though it's a negative at some point.
Yes, I agree. And and I can say from the perspective of someone who is working remotely all the time, it is crucial to have those feedbacks, because then I know if there are some things that I need to work with, etc. And then thanks to that, I can just deliver products with better quality.
And to wrap up, I would say everything what we said about this process, about the journey which we are always taking our partners. We were just laughing with Carolina that those things which you've heard are like our audience are not in the approach fake it before you make it, It's all the things I would say based on our experience, which we are
Yeah.
having on the market already with working remotely for our partners. And as we were saying, so we found out that the communication flexibility and efficiency is the thing to have in your IT testing project, and are very well appreciated with our clients. And in order to achieve it, we are just having at the beginning the first conversation with them, where we are asking not only the technical questions but the business question, having this BDD approach, knowing where the company is at the moment, where it's gonna where is it going, what are the plans, etc. The very handy one are the briefs, in order to be on the same page, having written down everything from our clients in order to understand all the things which I just mentioned. Then we are going to analyze this on our side, and then since the QA it's a broad topic, and as a QA agency we are just dealing that we divided like our departments into 4. On the top of them there is this QA lead manager who is responsible for the project, who is this person who is helping afterwards with some advices, etc. Kickoff call, meeting all together, making sure that we are on the same page, having everything up front, starting the onboarding afterwards, and then during the project, communication, proactiveness. Thank you, Karolina, that you mentioned all those stories which you have in your project, which was very long, I would say very big, because
Yes,
20
yes.
people in one team is the thing. It is already a group of people to manage, and then afterwards monitor this satisfaction of the clients by not being afraid to ask those questions. Please tell me what I did right, what I could improve, and how do you see it afterwards, where we should go.
And in my point of view, the monitoring and the feedback are the most important things, because then when we gather the client's opinion, then we can just fix some things up and then be better in our next project. And to sum up from my side, I wanted to tell that even if I am working remotely all the time, I've never felt less as a team member than other team members that were working in the office, I don't know, on the other side of the country. And if we are working remotely, it does not mean that we do not have to deliver a product of excellent quality. I have in mind one feedback from a guy who I was working with for a very long time. We were working in 2 projects, and he told me one day in one of our catch-ups that he knows that when he's off, I don't know, some kind of absence because he went to a conference or he's sick, or I don't know, he just can't make it to the office. He knows that he can rely on me, that I will just I will just take care of the project and the work will be done. So if that is not the best feedback that the remote worker can receive, I don't know what is the better one.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is, I would say, the best references for all the things we just said. So thank you, Karolina, that we could have this discussion right now. Here are our contact details. My contact details. So if there is any question afterwards, please just write us. And then the question is, what's the biggest challenge in home office for you? Karolina, would you like to start, or should I?
Sure, I can start. What is the biggest challenge in home office for you? For example, today there are some days that it's hard for me to focus, because when you are working home, there are always some things in home that needs to be done, laundry, the dishes, etc. And when I'm just, I don't know, going for a break to just stretch out and just clear my head, sometimes there are so many stimuli that it's harder for me to focus, because when I am at work in office, I am just focusing mostly and only on work, because I do not have any other stimulus that may affect me. So in my opinion, that's my biggest issue. And you, Janek?
And then I agree 100% with you. And the way I deal with it is I just decide that I'm gonna do all the things after 7 p.m.
Okay.
Let's say.
Okay.
So I'm not even touching the washing machine. I'm not watching. I'm not touching any vacuum before 7. So all the things are to overcome. And then the other question is it the same? How is it? How is that possible
that in a home office I got my work?
Okay, so we don't know how is it possible, but I mean, as the person, because I work remotely most of the time as well. Obviously, I gotta travel sometimes to our partners as well to meet with them in person. What I'm doing is like it depends. Again, I would say my very first question would be to prepare this brief and then distribute it to you, and then we will analyze this, what's your present situation and how to assign the problem and then the solution. What I can say as a side note, and it actually helped me on Coursera, I made a course, maybe Karina, you could do it as well, learning how to learn. So it's basically describing how our brain works. It is saying, of course, that all the brains work differently, and for different people, different approaches are working the best. So maybe you could, Charlotte, try it as well. It's just one of the things they are saying is that it's actually helpful that you're changing your environment. So for you, it might help that once you work, I don't know, at the living room, the other one at your room, and then just to stimulate your brain. So that would be my advice.
Okay, it sounds nice, Janek. I didn't hear of that course on Coursera. I know the platform because I was watching some of their courses, but I didn't heard of this one.
Oh, learning how to learn. Okay, cool.
Noted.
So yeah, noted. Karina, thank you very much one more time. Thanks to our audience as well, and we hope that it's gonna be useful, that we could share this this knowledge, this experience we were having in the past years. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guy. Bye.
Thank you.